A USA Today sports study of 67 bench-clearing incidents in Major League Baseball over the past 5 seasons found the main antagonists hailed from different ethnic backgrounds in 87% of the cases. Just more than half of them, 34, pitted white Americans against foreign-born Latinos. Johnny Gomes said, with it being an unwritten rule, there is unwritten definitions to a celebration or a taunt. It's in the eye of the beholder. Carlos Gomez, a Dominican native, says, why can a pitcher show you his emotions and you can't show yours to him? Those are baseball rules from a different time. Fernando Abad of the Athletics, who was born in the Dominican, said this, baseball back home is very different than here. In Venezuela, it's the same as in the Dominican, where players gesticulate and point a lot. Fans expect it. They're used to seeing the players do that. It's part of the custom. Skip, very interesting report here.
It is.
What do you make of it?
Very
well done.
Yeah, I appreciate the work that went into this report.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mark.
Yeah.
Stephen A. Smith.
Yes, sir.
For me, this whole issue boils down to the very old school and, in my view, outdated, unwritten rules of the age-old game of baseball that used to be our national pastime and is potentially becoming our national past its time, because it's living in the past. So we do have a number of the white players who grew up being taught that you don't play baseball with a whole lot of emotion or celebration, and occasionally this causes flare-ups with a number of the Latin players who did grow up, obviously in Puerto Rico, the Dominican, or Central or South America, who did grow up being encouraged by their fandom to show a little more emotion. Not huge emotion. We're not talking about going out of control and running to the stands and taunting and celebrating. We're talking about the occasional bat flip or the occasional standing and watching, admiring, if you will, a home run that has changed the momentum of a game. It's celebrating more than it's taunting, though a lot of the players, the older school players, have a hard time drawing a line between those two. So I'm here to tell you that my view of this is that a lot of those white players are living in the past, that they need to make peace with the fact, grin and bear the fact, that their game on a national level, as far as national appeal, is eroding. And I can just throw out a quick number for you. The World Series back in 1980, that was between Kansas City and Philadelphia, not two huge markets.
Right.
Did a rating of 32.8. Just think about this, 32.8 in 1980. We'll go all the way up now to 2012 as it really starts to erode. It did a 7.6 when San Francisco swept Detroit. Okay, so it's just the casual fan appeal has fallen off dramatically as football and basketball have risen to the top of America's stages. That's what I believe. Again, and I grew up loving baseball, and you did too, right? Yeah. Okay, so for the good of the game, a lot of the white players, the older school players, need to accept the fact that some fans do love some emotion shown, that they shouldn't look at it quite as severely and strictly as the old school rules tell them they should. Some of those old school rules even tell you that if a guy hits a home run off you and doesn't celebrate, and then hits another home run off you and doesn't celebrate, you're supposed to drill that guy. That's insane to me. That's thinking, that's prehistoric thinking to me, right? But that's part of, those are the unwritten rules of baseball, such as you don't flip your bat when you hit a home run. Again, the Latin players all say, starting with Carlos Gomez, I'm not trying to show you up, I'm just celebrating what I just did. And I'm okay with that, even though I'm much older school on this account than you are. But in this case, for the good of the appeal, the popularity of baseball on television, because we do have a large Latin population, and many of them are tuning in or tuning out, as it might be.
Within the next couple of, the next, 10 to 15 years, minorities are going to make up at least 50% of this population.
50%. Okay. So I'm suggesting that a number of those folks and a number of the younger white viewers will enjoy an occasional bat flip in a game of baseball that can be tediously slow for some of the younger viewers that we have out there.
Let me stay with you. I need you to stay with me on this, both of you. This is very, very important that what I'm about to say. I don't think it's controversial, but with Chuck Solitero, I edited for the show, you just never know. Stay with me.
Chuck's the best.
He's the man.
He's the best.
He is the man. I'm glad you said that. He is the man.
I'm glad someone can keep you in check.
Here's the deal. Well, I wouldn't say that. No one can do that. But here's the deal. Skip Bayless, you make a very valid point. I don't disagree with what you're saying because I do think that some of these rules, written and unwritten, are incredibly archaic. Not to mention the fact it's white dominant.
The rules are white dominant.
The rules, the unwritten rules.
Okay, yes.
Okay, the unwritten rules I'm talking about. The rules are fair for everybody, but the unwritten rules.
Yes.
Okay, and so you do have a point with all of that. I agree with you. Baseball needs to recognize how it's dissipated in terms of popularity in the eyes of the American public for a bevy of reasons. They need to pay attention to that and adapt to the times instead of always being the last ones to the party in terms of adapting to modern times. That's why the whole steroid situation came into full effect because of what they did. They were the last ones to the party, and they kept holding on, and they had a tremendously strong players union, and they fought and they fought and they fought until it hurt them and hurt the game, and they were called up on Capitol Hill and everything blew up. Having said all of that, you bring up Carlos Gomez, who I think as passionate as he is, and I think that you know, Buster Olney and others pointed out how he's always this way. So the Yankees shouldn't have overreacted to him weeks ago when they almost had a bench clearing brawl. I do think I would like to read the quote from Bud Norris of the San Diego Padres because it's very, very important.
Go ahead.
When he alluded to, you know, the bench clearing incidents involving players of different backgrounds, here's what his response to that was. Bud Norris, quote, "I think it's a culture shock. This is America. This is America's pastime. And over the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen a very big world influence in this game, which we as a union and as players appreciate. We're opening this game to everyone. We're opening this game to everyone. However, if you're going to come into our country and make our American dollars."
Now, he didn't say it that way, but go ahead.
I'm just I'm reading the quote.
Okay, I know.
I'm reading the quote.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
You need to respect a game that has been here for over 100 years.
That's right.
And I think sometimes that can be misconstrued. Here's what he's saying. It's our game, which leads to your point.
Okay, quick point of order. Before we leave Bud Norris.
Yes.
He did back off his quotes saying they were a little out of context, and he has apologized for how it came off. But again, I'm happy for you to read them.
My point to Bud Norris is this.
Okay.
He don't need to apologize.
All right.
He's a white guy who feels this way about the game of baseball. I find nothing racially insensitive or offensive about what Bud Norris said. He didn't do anything wrong.
Okay.
He talked about how he feels. The reason why I bring that up is because you can ultimately go to the extreme on the other side. We have Latino players, and I'm not talking about just Major League Baseball. I'm just saying whatever sport it is. We have African-American players, all right, that are stars, that are rich, wealthy, celebrity status as well, to the nth degree. And the attitude is we now have a license to buck the system. And so what you have is the Bud Norrises of the world who come across as trying to keep you in check, when in fact what they're saying really to you is that you are flagrantly violating what we stood on. Now, it's one thing to be a bit different. It's one thing to be a bit different culturally. It's one thing to come from a different background and to bring your flavor and your flair to the game. But it can't be to the extent that you're completely and totally disrespecting and dismissing what we stood for. If you had such a problem with how we do things, why are you here? So what I'm saying is, on one extreme, you have how Bud Norris's comments can be misconstrued, but on the other extremes, it elevates the level of validity to his statements, because you have folks on the other side that go to the extreme in coming across as offended by those standards. Somewhere along the way in America, when we're coming this way, you know, when we want folks to come this way, rather, we got to be willing to meet them. And on far too many occasions in our society, you have guys from a younger generation that are so interested in bucking the system, they come across as if they have no respect for the system. And as a result, it leads to them having no respect for individuals, no respect for authority. And when you have those things going on, you have chaos. And that is why I always use this statement. And I'll use ESPN as an example. as stringent as folks can be, as tight as folks can be, because this is Mickey Mouse and it's a happy place.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, because that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I would rather work for a company any day of the week with standards
Sure.
Yeah.
than one trying to
Amen to
find
that.
standards. And that, to me, is all that I'm saying with this.
Okay.
You can't go to the other extreme and try to dismiss
So
everything.
you're saying
historically.
that you do admire the old school players having respect for the tradition, the 100-plus-year-old tradition of the game.
Just adapt better to change.
Okay, because there's some common ground where it's not
That's
that
all I'm
big a
saying.
deal. It's
That's
not that
right.
big a deal.
That's right.
Look, if Carlos Gomez hit a 3-run homer in the bottom of the 8th inning and ran to the stands and gloated and celebrated, that would be completely out of bounds,
Right.
but he wouldn't do that.
Right.
But he might flip his bat and he might stand for just a second and admire
But
his
the
home.
problem with him is that when he flips his bat and somebody expresses a problem with it, he's always ready to fight while other folks are watching. While simply, it's rare that I can't imagine seeing Carlos Gomez going like this. I didn't mean to offend you. I didn't mean anything by it. Instead, he's saying, shut up. What you going to do? Well, all right, now it's like you got a problem. That's what I mean by meeting halfway.
That's fair. That's fair.
Just meet him halfway. Everything ain't got to be a fight. Sometimes you didn't mean anything bad, but you might have gone a little bit extra with it than you needed to. There's got to be a happy medium on both sides, and it seems when both sides are determined to maintain their position, no progress is made, and all we have are the kind of problems we're talking about.
Can I sum this up by saying, just remember, in the old days, if a white player stood and admired his home run, the other white player, the white pitcher is going to have a problem. So it's not that they have a problem with the Latinos. If they have a problem with anybody, he's going to disrespect the traditions of basically the unwritten rules. Okay.
Absolutely.
I think we all agree that we don't want the game to lose its tradition, but it does need to evolve. And that little quote you said stuck with me, the pastime to past its time. It's so true. Moving on, Rex Ryan says that Tom Brady and the Pats were on a mission to embarrass the Bills in Week 2. Do we feel bad for Rex? We'll talk about that coming up.